I woke up early that morning. The sun was not very bright. My room felt quiet and a little cold. I sat at my desk. My laptop was in front of me. The screen was still black. Today was the day. The exam results would come today. My heart beat fast. I took a deep breath. Then I opened my laptop. I checked my email. One new message. My hand stopped for a moment. I looked at the screen but did not click. I already knew what this email was about. The big exam. The exam I studied for many months. The exam I already failed 2 times before. I whispered to myself, maybe this time is different. My finger moved slowly. I clicked the email. The message was short. Very short. Dear candidate, we are sorry to inform you that you did not pass the exam. I read the sentence again and again. My eyes stayed on the word not. Not pass. I leaned back in my chair. My room felt even quieter now. Outside my window, I heard a car pass by. Someone was walking a dog. Life was moving like a normal day. But inside my room, everything felt heavy. I closed my eyes. 3 times, I said softly. This is the 3rd time. I looked at my books on the desk. There were many of them. Notes, practice tests, flashcards. I remembered many nights. I stayed up late. I drank too much coffee. I read the same pages again and again. I thought about the last exam. When I failed the first time, I felt shocked. When I failed the second time, I felt embarrassed. But this time felt different. This time I felt tired. Very tired. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from my friend Daniel. I got the result, he wrote. I passed. A second message came. Did you check yours? I stared at the phone. My fingers did not move. Daniel and I studied together before. Now he already had a new job. I was still here, still taking the same exam, still failing. I slowly turned the phone over. I did not want to see the screen. I stood up and walked to the window. The sky was blue now. More people were outside. A woman was buying coffee. 2 students were laughing. They looked relaxed. I wondered what it felt like to wake up without fear, without an exam, without this pressure. I returned to my desk. The email was still open. The same sentence looked back at me. You did not pass. I spoke quietly. Maybe. I am just not good enough. The words felt heavy in my mouth. I sat there for a long time. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. I did not move. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Her name appeared on the screen. For a moment I thought about not answering, but I picked up the phone. Hello, I said. Her voice sounded warm. Hi, did the results come today? I looked at the laptop screen. My throat felt tight. Yes, I said. There was a small pause. And? She asked gently. I looked down at my hands. They were shaken a little. I failed again. The room became quiet. Very quiet. I waited for her to say something. Maybe she would sound disappointed. Maybe she would ask many questions. But she did not. She spoke slowly. It's okay. Just 2 words. It's okay, she said again. You worked very hard. I felt something warm in my chest, but the sadness was still there. I don't know what is wrong with me, I said. Everyone else passes. She did not answer right away. Then she said softly, Everyone has a different road. I looked out the window again. The people outside were still walking. Cars were still moving. Life was still going forward. But I felt stuck, like I was standing in the same place. I closed my laptop. The screen went dark. I need some air, I said. That's a good idea, my mother replied. Go for a walk. I put on my jacket. Before leaving the room, I looked once more at the desk, at the books, at the notes, at the long months of study. I whispered quietly, What should I do now? Then I opened the door and walked outside. The air outside felt cool and fresh. I walked slowly down the street. The city was already awake. People were buying coffee. Buses were stopping at the station. Students were walking to school with heavy bags. Everything looked normal. But inside my head, one sentence kept coming back. You did not pass. I tried to shake the thought away, but it stayed with me. I walked into a small coffee shop near my apartment. The shop smelled warm and sweet. Fresh bread sat behind the glass counter. The woman at the counter smiled. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," I answered quietly. "What would you like?" "Just a coffee," I said. She nodded and started making the drink. I stood near the window and waited. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. Our old study group chat was very active today. Messages kept appearing. "I passed. Me too. I can't believe it. Dinner tonight to celebrate." I saw many happy faces and party emojis. My chest felt tight. I scrolled slowly through the messages. Then I saw Daniel's message again. "Where are you? Did you pass?" I stared at the screen. My finger moved over the keyboard. But I did not type anything. What should I say? "Sorry, I failed again." I imagined the silence after that message. Maybe they would feel uncomfortable. Maybe they would try to say something nice. But I did not want their pity. The barista called my order. "Coffee for Alex." I picked up the cup. "Thank you," I said. I sat at a small table by the window. Outside, people were walking fast. Many of them wore office clothes. They looked busy. They looked like they knew where they were going. I took a small sip of coffee. It was hot and a little bitter. I looked at my phone again. Another message appeared. This time it was from my friend Lily. "Dinner tonight at 7, she wrote. "Everyone is coming." Then another message came. "You should come too." My heart dropped a little. I knew they meant well. They were my friends. But I did not feel ready to see them. Not today. I imagined the table. Everyone smiling. Everyone talking about their new jobs. Their future plans. Their success. And me? I would sit there quietly. The one who failed again. I locked my phone and placed it on the table. A few minutes later, it buzzed again. This time the screen showed a different name. Mom. I answered the call. "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded calm. "Did you eat breakfast?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "I'm drinking coffee." "That's not enough," she replied gently. "You need real food." I smiled a little. "Okay, I'll eat later." There was a short pause. Then she asked softly, "Are you outside now?" "Yes," I said. "I'm at a coffee shop." "That's good," she said. "You should not stay in your room all day." I looked around the shop. 2 students were studying together. An older man was reading a newspaper. A young woman was typing on her laptop. Everyone looked focused on their own life. "Mom," I said quietly. "Yes." "I feel like everyone is moving forward, and I'm just standing still." She listened carefully. Then she asked, "Do you remember when you learned to ride a bike?" I thought for a moment. "Yes," I said. "You fell many times," she said. I laughed softly. "That's true." "I remember you crying," she continued. "You said you would never try again." I looked down at the coffee in my hands. "But the next day," she said, "you tried again. And again. And again." Finally I asked, "What if I keep falling?" She answered slowly, "Then you keep standing up." Her voice was warm. "You don't see it now," she said, "but every try makes you stronger." I was quiet. Outside the window, the street was busy. Cars stopped at the red light. People crossed the road together. Life kept moving. "I know it hurts," she said, "but today is just one day." I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said softly. Try to eat something, she added, and take a walk. I will. We ended the call. I finished the last sip of coffee. Then I stood up and left the shop. I did not know where I was going. I just walked, past the bus stop, past the small park, past many busy streets. After a while, I reached a quiet building. A simple sign stood near the door. City Library. I stopped walking. I looked at the sign for a moment. Then I whispered to myself, maybe I should study again. The thought felt heavy, but it also felt familiar. I pushed the door open and walked inside. The library was very quiet. The moment I walked inside, the city noise disappeared. No car sounds, no busy voices. Only soft footsteps and the sound of pages turning. The air smelled like old books and paper. I walked slowly between the tall shelves. Books stood in long rows. History books, science books, language books. So many people wrote these books. So many people studied before me. I wondered how many of them failed before they succeeded. I found the exam section. The same books were there, the same titles, the same thick study guides. My chest felt a little heavy again. I'm back, I whispered to myself. I picked up a book and walked to a table near the window. Sunlight came through the glass. Dust floated slowly in the air. I opened the book. Page 1. The words looked familiar. Too familiar. I had read these pages many times before. I tried to focus. I read one line, then another. But my mind kept drifting away. I sighed quietly. Maybe studying again was a bad idea. Maybe I should take a break. Maybe I should just stop trying. At that moment, a voice spoke near me. Big exam. I looked up. An old man stood beside the table. He held 2 books in his hands. His hair was white and thin. His back was a little bent, but his eyes looked bright. He smiled gently. I nodded. Yes, I said. He looked at the book on my table. Difficult one, he said. I gave a small laugh. Yes, very difficult. He placed his books on the table across from me. Then he sat down. He moved slowly but carefully. I noticed something interesting. His books were also exam books, very similar to mine. I felt curious. Are you studying for this exam too? I asked. He nodded. Yes. His answer surprised me. You mean the same exam? I asked. He smiled again. Yes, the same one. I looked at him with wide eyes. He must have seen my confusion. How old do you think I am? He asked. I felt a little embarrassed. I'm not sure, I said politely. He chuckled. 72. I blinked. 72. Yes, he said calmly. I have time now. He tapped the book lightly. So I study. I looked at the pages in front of me. Then I looked back at him. Have you taken the exam before? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yes. How many times? I asked. He thought for a moment. 2 times. I looked down at my desk. My voice became quiet. I failed 3 times. The words felt heavy again. I expected him to say something kind, maybe something like, that's okay. But instead he smiled. Good. I looked up quickly. Good, I repeated. He nodded. Yes, good. I stared at him in confusion. How is that good? I asked. He leaned back in his chair. His eyes looked calm. That means you tried 3 times, he said. I did not answer. He continued. Most people stop after 1. His words surprised me. I had never thought about it that way. He pointed gently at my book. You came back today, he said. That is not failure. That is courage. I felt quiet. No one had ever used that word for me before. Courage. I always thought I was just stubborn, or maybe slow. The old man opened his book. He began reading. After a moment, he looked up again. Tell me something, he said. Yes, I replied. Why do you want to pass this exam? The question felt simple, but the answer felt complicated. I thought for a moment. Because I want a better job, I said. And? And I want to prove something. To who? He asked. I looked down. Maybe the answer was simple. To myself. The old man nodded slowly. That is a good reason. Then he said something very quietly. Learning is not a race. I looked at him again. He closed his book gently. Some people walk fast, he said. Some people walk slow. Then he tapped the table lightly. But the road is still the same. The library was silent again. A few students were studying nearby. Pages turned softly. Pens moved across paper. I looked at my book again. For the first time that day, the pages did not look like enemies. They just looked like pages. The old man smiled. Let us study, he said. Together. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. And for the first time since the morning, I opened the book again without fear. The next day I returned to the library. I walked past the same shelves. I carried the same heavy book. But something felt a little different. I was not as afraid. When I reached the table near the window, the old man was already there. He sat in the same chair. The morning sunlight fell on the table. He looked up and smiled. Good morning, he said. Good morning, I replied. You came back. Yes, I said. He nodded with satisfaction. That is step 1. I sat down and opened my book. For a few minutes we studied quietly. I read one page, then another. But soon I felt confused again. The same problem returned. Too many words, too many ideas. My head felt full. I sighed. The old man noticed. He closed his book. What is the problem? He asked. This chapter, I said. I read it many times. But I still don't understand. He leaned forward. Show me. I pointed to a long paragraph. He looked at it carefully, then he shook his head gently. Too many words, he said. Yes, I said quickly. That is exactly the problem. He smiled. Then we changed the way. He took a blank piece of paper. Then he wrote 3 short lines. Idea 1, idea 2, idea 3. That is the whole paragraph, he said. I stared at the paper. That's it? That's it. He pushed the paper toward me. Learning is like cooking, he said. You do not eat the whole chicken at once. I laughed. You cut it into pieces. Small pieces. His explanation felt simple, but it made sense. He pointed to my book again. Now you try. I read the next paragraph slowly. Then I wrote 3 short ideas. The old man nodded. Good. We continued like this for an hour. Read. Break it into small ideas. Write simple notes. Suddenly the chapter did not look so scary. It looked possible. After a while, I leaned back in my chair. I wish I studied like this before, I said. The old man smiled. Before you were fighting the book. And now you are talking to it. I liked that idea. Talking to the book. Not fighting it. In the afternoon we took a short break. We walked outside the library. There was a small bench near the entrance. We sat there together. The wind moved the leaves in the trees. Students walked past us. Some were laughing. Some were tired. Tell me, the old man said, are you afraid of the next exam? I thought for a moment. Yes, I admitted. I am still afraid. What are you afraid of? He asked. Failing again. The words came out quickly. I don't want to feel that again. He listened carefully, then he nodded slowly. That feeling is normal. But fear is a strange teacher. I looked at him. What do you mean? He folded his hands. When you fear failure, you only see one result. Pass or fail. I nodded. That is how exams work. He shook his head gently. No. That is how people think. He pointed toward the library. When you study, something else happens. What? I asked. You grow. The word felt simple, but it stayed in my mind. He continued, every hour you study, your mind changes. Every mistake teaches something. He looked at me seriously. Failing is not the opposite of success. I waited. It is part of success. The sentence felt powerful. I repeated it quietly. Part of success. He smiled. Yes. We sat there for a moment in silence. Then he stood up slowly. Come, he said, let us continue. Back inside the library, we studied again. The hours passed quietly, page after page, idea after idea. My notes became clearer. My mind felt calmer. When the sun began to set, I packed my bag. I looked at the old man. Thank you, I said, for studying with me. He waved his hand lightly. We are both students. Before leaving, he said one more thing. Tomorrow, he added. Same table. I smiled. Yes. As I walked home that evening, I noticed something new. For the first time in a long time, I was not thinking about failing. I was thinking about learning. And somehow, that felt much lighter. Weeks passed. Then months passed. Every morning I went to the library. And almost every morning the old man was already there. Same table, same chair, same warm smile. Good morning, he would say. Good morning, I would reply. Our days became simple. We read. We wrote small notes. We broke big ideas into small ideas. Sometimes we studied for hours without speaking. But the silence felt comfortable. Sometimes we talked during short breaks. He told me stories from his life. He once worked as a teacher. Later, he worked in a small company. After he retired, he finally had time to study again. I always liked learning, he said one day, but life was busy. So now, he smiled, I study slowly. His words stayed in my mind. Study slowly. Not rushing. Not comparing. Just learning. My fear of the exam slowly became smaller. It did not disappear, but it became quieter. Each week I understood more. Each week my notes became better. One afternoon I finished a long practice test. I looked at my answers carefully. Then I checked the results. My score was good, better than before, much better. I looked up at the old man. I'm ready, I said. He nodded calmly. I know. How did you know? I asked. He pointed to my notebook. Your questions changed. What do you mean? Before, he said, you asked, will I fail? He smiled gently. Now you ask, why does this work? I looked at my notebook again. He was right. My thinking had changed. A few weeks later, the exam day arrived. I woke up early again, just like the day of the last result. But this morning felt different. The fear was still there. But something else was there too. Confidence. At the exam center, many students waited outside. Some looked nervous, some looked tired. Some were reading their notes again and again. I stood quietly. Then I remembered the old man's words. Small pieces. Talk to the book. Learning is not a race. I took a deep breath. Then the doors opened. We walked inside. The exam lasted many hours. Some questions were difficult, but my mind stayed calm. When I saw a hard problem, I did not panic. I broke it into small ideas, just like we practiced. When the exam finished, I walked outside slowly. The sky was bright. The air felt warm. I did not know the result yet, but I felt peaceful. A few days later, the email arrived. My heart beat fast again. I opened the message. The sentence was short, very short. Congratulations, you passed the exam. I stared at the screen. Then I read it again and again. Passed. I laughed softly. Then I covered my face with my hands. For a moment I just sat there. 3 failures, many months, So many hours in the library. Finally, I passed. The first person I wanted to tell was the old man. I grabbed my jacket and left the apartment. I walked quickly to the library. My heart felt light. When I entered the building, the quiet air welcomed me again. I walked between the shelves. Then I reached the table near the window, but the chair across from it was empty. I waited. 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes passed. The old man did not come. I walked to the front desk. The librarian stood there. "Excuse me," I said. "Yes," she replied. "I'm looking for an older man," I explained. "He studies near the window every day. White hair, kind smile." She thought for a moment, then her face softened. "Ah," she said quietly, "I know who you mean." "Where is he today?" I asked. The librarian looked at me gently. "He hasn't come this week." My chest felt tight. "Is he okay?" She nodded slowly. "He moved to live with his daughter. In another city." "Oh," I said softly. I walked back to the table near the window. The sunlight still touched the desk, the same warm light as before. Then I noticed something. A small piece of paper lay on the table. My heart beat faster. I picked it up. The handwriting looked familiar. Simple, a little shaky. The note said, "Try again. That is courage." My eyes felt warm. I sat down in the chair, the same chair where he always sat. I looked at the note again. Then I whispered softly, "Thank you." Outside the window, people walked along the street. Cars passed. Students hurried to class. Life continued moving forward. And this time, I was moving with it.